10 years ago, people actually had to physically go somewhere, wait in the queue, hand over cash, and the lending landscape was similarly quite cash-based, not technological. It would take many days, if not weeks, to get a loan.
Welcome to How to Lend Money to Strangers with Brendan Lagrange. I've lived on 3 continents and visited 50 countries as a tourist, so I feel like I've got a pretty decent grasp on world geography. But Tajikistan, that's a country I'd struggle to place on a map. Even now, after looking it up, if it weren't for the Caspian Sea, I'm not sure I'd be able to pick it out if you shuffle Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan around a bit in that corner west of China and south of Russia. 10 years ago, its lending landscape was as slow and arduous to move through as its mountains are, but not today, thanks in no small part to the digital-first disruption of Alif Bank, whose co-founder, Abdullo Kurbanov, is with me today. Abdullo Kurbanov, co-founder of Alif Bank, a buy now, pay later and mobile-first disruptor in retail banking that is now also one of the leading fintechs in Central Asia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brendan. You have a great show. It's a privilege to be speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. And you've got a great story with Alif that I'm really looking forward to exploring now. But before we jump straight to that, I think it would be a shame if we left out your experience beforehand.
Sure. My professional career started in the UK. After graduating from the LSE, I started working in financial consulting first, and then I moved on to investment banking at UBS. I was covering metals and mining out of the London office. And then I also worked in Mongolia for a year as a VP for mining investments for a British private equity firm. I also incidentally learned how to code, well, a little bit during my work at Oliver Wyman. And that skill, to the small degree that it was helpful when we started Alif, because our first sort of small in-house software was written back of that experience.
Yeah, you didn't go straight into banking. You became an internet founder as well. So just talk a little bit about your previous experience in starting an internet startup.
Well, I returned to Tajikistan about 10 years ago, and I was fortunate to have met with a lot of great minds and great hearts, which led us to establish several successful companies, a few failed ones too, for sure. And Alif Bank is, of course, the one I've spent most of my time on. But as you said, it's probably worth mentioning Somon TJ as well. It's a classified ads company. We started with Jahangir Zabirov and Dilawar Amonov in 2012. Back then, in Tajikistan, people used a newspaper to announce job vacancies, car sales, house sales, similar things. And it was a newspaper solely dedicated to classified ads. It would come out once a week. You had to pay to place an ad, and others had to pay to buy the newspaper and read the ads. But it was the only way, and people used it. So it was clear at that point, especially after having seen Gumtree in the UK, for example, that in the future, obviously this is where it would move. So we started the project. It took off slowly, but over the years, it grew to become the most visited and the most popular website in the Tajik internet domain. It's number 1 locally. And if we include foreign websites like Google and Instagram and so on, it's currently number 7. It's important to say that all the credit goes to my co-founders, investors, and the team at Somon TJ. Initially, I was more involved, but after founding Alif, Alif was my main focus, really.
Takes time to start a bank. Let's start talking a little bit about Tajikistan, because for many people, myself included, I think it's a country and a sort of a broader Central Asian region that we don't hear about a lot. What is the marketplace like in Tajikistan? And in particular, what was that lending market like when you were thinking about starting Alif?
Tajikistan, it's a small country. We have about 10 million people. It's a very beautiful mountainous place. About 93% of our territory is covered by mountains. The Himalaya foothills, they go all across Tajikistan. And there's a lot of mountaineering, hiking, and this sort of activities taking place. Very beautiful. And it's ranked as one of the safest countries in the world as well. Sadly, the economy is highly cash-based. About 80% of our monetary base is outside the banking sector. And 10 years ago, for a lot of transactions, people actually had to physically go somewhere, sometimes wait in the queue, and then hand over physical cash for lots of things, from like utility bill payments, sending or receiving money from someone. And the lending landscape was similarly quite cash-based, not technological. It would take many days, if not weeks, to get a loan. Default rates among banks, especially around 2015, went as high as about 40%. And in terms of technology in the financial sector, it was mainly the core banking system, usually built by Russian software companies like Erstyle and Tsefte. And I think one or two banks also had Oracle core banking system. But that was the landscape before and around the time we started Alif.
What did you see that made you think, okay, this is a challenge we can take on? I want to revolutionize the landscape here.
With that background in terms of the financial industry, we wanted to establish the first Islamic and technological bank in the country to try to tackle those issues. And we needed about $10 million to start a bank. So we knocked on many doors, but we could not convince any investors. So we just decided to start ourselves. We went for the smallest license that we could afford. So in 2014, myself, Firdaus Mirzoev, and Zulsho Rahmatullayev, and an angel investor together established Alif as a microfinance company with Islamic finance principles in mind. Thankfully, today we have more than 1,000 employees, over 1.5 million clients. We finally got our banking license 3 years ago. And within a year, we were voted as the most trusted bank in the country. So today we have about 90% of the buy now, pay later market, or 50% of mobile payments and mobile outbound remittances market. We are the leaders in e-commerce. We signed a strategic partnership with Visa, the only such strategic partnership among the commercial banks in the region. And today, approximately 50% of all Visa payments in Tajikistan go through Alif. 4 years ago, we expanded to Uzbekistan, a much larger neighboring country. And today we have about 35% of the BNPL market in Uzbekistan as well. At the moment, our run rate revenue is about $50 million. And thankfully, we've been growing at triple-digit rates annually.
You've obviously been a part of change in the Tajik market. Have you seen the market landscape follow you? Are there other changes happening now as the lending landscape also tries to keep up with your pace? Or what does the landscape look like now, 10 years later?
It's a privilege and it's also a responsibility because as we have been providing these services in Tajikistan in particular, we saw a lot of other banks also starting to provide similar services, and there's a good, healthy level of competition, especially in the payments area. With the BNPL, it's a product that has iterated over the years, and it seems like it's harder to replicate, at the moment at least, by others because it relies on several layers of technology. Quite importantly, we developed our entire stack of banking technologies in-house, our own core banking system, client relationship management software, mobile payment software, acquiring software, the mobile apps, and so on. And to this date, Alif is still the only bank in the country that has full internally written banking system and many years ahead in terms of being able to roll out. So with the BNPL, we're still far ahead in the market. But with the payment services, we've seen companies either bring in foreign software, and there have been a few that have written internally and they're active. For example, just in the bus or minibuses that we have in the city, you can pay with your card. It's all digital. By now, any utility bill payment, it can be done from home. And as I was saying, thankfully, as per the data from the Central Bank of Tajikistan, we have still the dominant share of the market. But the market is improving. We had non-cash transactions increasing significantly in pace. It's still small, Brandon, to be clear, but just the mobile payments per se have reached almost the same size as the cards, and they're still growing at like 5 times volume per year.
From a customer point of view, if they're thinking about borrowing money, what products does Alif offer?
The main product that we have is what can be probably called as BNPL, but it's different from most of the traditional BNPLs that you probably think of, like Klarna and others, because our products have a maturity of an average of about 12 months. And they range from 10 days all the way to 2 years. If we look at Tajikistan, we provide about 150,000 loans monthly. The average amount is about $40, and 80% of these loans are taken through Alif's mobile app. It's instantaneous. It happens either at the point of sales, at the store. Just to give an example, a couple of days ago, a taxi driver was telling me that he uses Alif Mobi to get a quick loan on the spot to buy petrol for his car. And then he provides the taxi service to people. He earns an income, and then he uses part of that income to pay back the loan. And generally, the whole process is seamless. Once we onboard the client, we assign them credit limit, and they can do transactions at thousands of stores and locations, and everything is processed within Alif to minimize third-party costs. So we do the merchant acquiring, we do the issuing of the loan, the app is ours, and so on. And stepping slightly back from the lending itself, in Alif Mobi, there are hundreds of high-demand services that users can pay for. They can send and receive money inside the country or to and from abroad. And you can easily use your pre-approved loan limit, or you can use your debit card balance or your wallet balance. And the volume on our side has been tripling every year.
The amount of time that you're freeing up in the country by being able to do these transactions seamlessly from your phone, from wherever you happen to be, is remarkable. I think really great to hear. I remember particularly from when we were chatting when we first met, the deep philosophical roots of Alif, that it's not just we're another micro lender and we doing it more efficiently so we can drop the price a bit and improve access to credit. You do have this root in Islamic banking that shapes the organization in terms of the products, but also in terms of your concept of how you manage profitability and all of that. So how does the Islamic banking philosophy translate through into the way you design your products, the way you design your interactions with your customers?
We try to do everything as much within Islamic finance principles as we can within the existing regulations. There is an Islamic banking law in Tajikistan. We have applied for the license and we're waiting. And in the meantime, we are making sure that our processes are as aligned as we can have them. Now, the main difference between Islamic finance and traditional finance is that in Islamic finance, interest is prohibited. It doesn't mean that Islamic banks are non-profit, but the mechanics are a bit different. Let me give you an example. One of the core products in Islamic finance is called Murabaha. The bank finances the purchase of an asset or a service. For example, client wants to buy an equipment and needs $10,000. The Islamic bank would buy the equipment and sell it to the client for, let's say, $11,000, and the $1,000 would be the profit of the Islamic bank, called a markup. You could look at this and say, how does that really differ from paying interest? And it's actually one of a frequent received criticisms when you don't consider an important point. The difference comes when the borrower pays later than agreed upon for any reason. In the traditional interest-based loan, the interest is accrued, sometimes daily, sometimes monthly, often compounded. And the longer you hold the funds, the more you have to pay in terms of interest. In Murabaha, once you agree with the Islamic bank on the size of the markup, that absolute dollar amount is maximum that the Islamic bank can make. And if you look at it from the incentive mechanisms and so on, or if you consider that in most of the history, we didn't have consumer protection laws, we didn't have prohibitions against usurious rates, the loan could double and quadruple if the borrower defaulted. People fell into debt traps and they could not get out of. So Murabaha is quite different in that respect. That means that the Islamic banks, because they cannot make any money if the client defaults, they are actually more prudent, more diligent when they provide financing. And as we see more Islamic banks in the world, we'll see how they can fare through the crisis. And I believe that the 2007 financial crisis was a moment where Islamic banks actually fared much better compared to the traditional banks.
I quite like that transparency in there right up front. Okay, am I comfortable taking on a loan? And then you can decide yes or no.
It's just much easier to really understand the cost of something when it's given in absolute figures. And we still have to show it in terms of our own laws here, in terms of what that equates in terms of traditional interest, if it were an interest paid on time. But still, the user actually can see what the absolute number is.
I've got a question on how you make the loan decision. So when a customer is applying for credit with you at Alif, what tools and techniques do you have at your disposal to evaluate that? Are there credit bureaus in the market? Are you using sort of alternative data?
In Tajikistan and in Uzbekistan, the process is slightly different but similar. We do have credit bureaus, and they're quite useful. In Tajikistan, unfortunately, we don't have a database where we could get access with client's permission, for example, and see the taxes paid by the client in terms of the salary taxes and so on. So we have to rely on alternative data sources quite a lot. In addition to credit bureau, we have integrations with mobile operators. We also see how they use Alif Mobi. Alif Mobi by now is a very popular payment application. And we see the volumes of payments that the user make and the type of payments they make. And based on this sort of integrations, if it's a client where we're not very comfortable, we can assign a smaller limit, or if we have additional data points, we can assign a higher limit, and then the clients with smaller credit limit can also over time get access to higher credit limits as they work with us and as they show that they're consistently being responsible. In Uzbekistan, we do actually have access to data that can show us the financial inflows and outflows of the client. And broadly, in both countries, we're also working on the AI implementation. So we're calling the model Gulchitay. It's a traditional name for Central Asia. So people from the region would probably smile at that choice, but it's a name for girls. And she does the scoring for increasing number of those applications.
You've mentioned Uzbekistan. Obviously, Alif is still a young upstart, but you've already got growth through the region, and I'm sure you've got big ambitions. What are your regional ambitions, and maybe what challenges did that move into Uzbekistan bring, and what did it teach you as you've looked to expand your footprint wider?
Yeah, expanding to Uzbekistan, I think it was one of the best decisions we ever made. It was 2018. We had a trip to Tashkent with my co-founders, Firdaus and Zulsho. We looked at the market. We really liked a number of indications and observations there. Doing business in Uzbekistan is quite straightforward. There is rule of law. The court system is very efficient. Foreign investors are welcome. And we felt that we could come here and actually attempt to do business for the first time outside of Tajikistan. So in 2019, Zuhusho took the challenge. He relocated to Tashkent, and we started building our services and our team there. And in these almost 4 years now, we are active in all the regions of Uzbekistan. And by our estimates, we have about 35% of the point of sales financing market. We brought in the payments app to the country as well. We just launched it a year ago. Now it's growing very fast. And it taught us a lot of things. First, it made us a bit more positive in terms of expanding to new countries. So we started by targeting the markets where we felt our products could be of help and where the impact could also be felt in terms of the scale. So we went to countries like Bangladesh, to Pakistan, to the United Arab Emirates, to Saudi. We made our remote research of Indonesia, of Egypt. And after a lot of deliberation, we decided, okay, we'll try to establish our presence in Pakistan. So we applied for a digital banking license there. And we will try to work on remittance piece of the puzzle in the Gulf area, starting from the United Arab Emirates. We're launching a service which will help the migrant workers in the United Arab Emirates to send money home in situations where they don't have the funds. We can send it for them and they can, pay us back later. Secondly, it taught us about, and actually it made us to rewrite our software so that it's compatible with multi-user, multi-language, multi-tenant, and a hybrid data infrastructure. We actually took a whole year to rewrite our mobile app, Alif Mobi, and it became a case study with AWS because of the way we built this hybrid local versus cloud data architecture. Our long-term vision, Brendan, is to build a global champion in Islamic fintech and hopefully serve as many of 2 billion plus Muslims in the world as we can.
As we start to wrap up, Abdullo, one of the marks of a great leader has always been said, how well are they building up their replacements? How well are they developing other leaders as well? And I see that you've recently done just that. You've handed over the reins as CEO of Alif. How did you manage that process? How did you think through the idea of, okay, I'm going to go give this thing I've created to somebody else to run while I take on new challenges?
Myself and a team here, we're working on Islamic finance propositions within digital asset space, right? So thankfully, we've been always, growing quite rapidly and everyone in Alif had to grow in that process. The transition plan started for more than a year ago. In January of last year, we appointed the management board in Alif Bank. It consists of 3 people, Gulanor Atobek, Dilawar Amonov, and Daler Karimov. Dilawar and Daler had been with Alif for many years now, and Gulanor had joined recently from Deloitte, where she had worked for about 17 years. She was leading the practice in Tajikistan for the past 13 years or so. And I should be naming 20, 30, many more people that are, in the senior management of Alif, because we're truly blessed with some of the best people. And we have actually had zero churn in our top management from the very start. And I actually want to take a step back here, if you don't mind, and just make a few remarks about people in Alif overall, about our efforts in combining technology and education. I don't know if you knew the average age of our employees is 25. We hire a lot of students, recent graduates, and we train them ourselves. So to give an example of specific training, for example, IT skills is an area where we felt that we could contribute to the education system in Tajikistan. So we established Alif Academy in 2017, a non-profit where we promote IT education. So we provide free programming courses, including special courses for girls, for kids, for Afghan refugees. So far, we've had more than 2,000 graduates of these courses, and some of them work in Alif, some of them work in other companies. And hopefully now in the new countries, we have the privilege of being able to attract some of the most bright, kind, noble, energetic individuals. Throughout all these years, we had more than 50,000 applications to our vacancies. And we've chosen and retained the very best. And we really wanted them to feel the ownership of Alif in all ways, including the financial aspect. So we have an employee stock option plan where more than 25% of Alif's shares is dedicated to employees, and that we distribute that quite widely. More than 300 of our employees are also shareholders. So I can go on and on about our team for hours because, they're the greatest blessing we have.
Remarkable that such a fast-growing, fast-changing environment, you've managed to keep at this core of people there and growing them and developing them, I guess, giving them these challenges for the future that keep them fulfilled. So, a lovely story to hear. And for yourself, I know you're not just sort of stepping away to take some time off. You've got some exciting challenges that you are looking at for Alif as well. So do you want to finish by just talking about what you're going to be focusing your energies on?
In addition to the geographic expansion that we're having, we're also considering the technological expansions that we make. And blockchain surely has been one of those technological advances that have caught a lot of people's attention. And we've been studying this for more than a year now. And we feel that we could possibly bring very valuable, very transparent and ethical Islamic finance solutions into the digital asset space. And we're working on it. We are planning to launch our first service within the next couple of weeks. In terms of the longer term roadmap, hopefully the results would speak for themselves, but it's an interest-free short-term loan that we provide to our clients in stablecoins. They provide us with collateral in other common cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. And it's fully interest-free. The users can leave a tip if they want to. We have had a similar product in Tajikistan, and it's used quite commonly. You can check it on waad.io, WAAD.
So if people want to follow the Alif story, if they want to learn more about what you're doing, where's a good place to go to follow you or to keep in touch with that growth?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. Myself, Abdullo Kurbanov, as well as my co-founders, dear friends, Zulshora Matloy, Firdaus Mirzev.
We'll put the links in the show notes. Thank you again for your time. It's been wonderful hearing about what you've achieved and exciting to hear what your ambitions are for the future. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Brendan.
And thank you all for listening. Please do look for and follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and share the updates widely on LinkedIn, where lending nerds are found in our largest concentration. Plus, send me a connection request while you're there. This show is written and recorded by myself, Brendan Lagrange, in Brighton, England, and edited by Fina Charlson of FC Productions. Show music is by I Am Wake, and you can find show notes and written transcripts at www.howtolendmoneytostrangers.show or just www.htlmts.show, and I'll see you again next Thursday.